Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Markley?
Here.
Alvey?
Here. So again, I'll just remind, if you'd like to address the commission on the public hearing agenda regarding the proposed 2019 Unified Government Budget and the 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan for Community Development, please sign up at either of the tables located by the chamber doors. So when that item is up for discussion, the clerk will call the names in order according to the sign-up sheets. She will also announce who's up next. That means you'll be next to the podium. And when you come to the podium, right up here, please state your name and city of residency for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments. The clerk will announce when you have 1 minute remaining to allow you time to conclude your comments. So tonight is our final public hearing to receive citizen comments on the proposed 2020 Unified Government Budget and the 2019-2020 Community Development Annual Action Plan. I'd ask County Administrator Doug Bach to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it, Reggie, if you want to move to that first slide. But I will say our annual budget process as we move into it is one where it's become a process where we work through most of the year. In fact, I would say we've spent about 9 months working on the budget as it leads up to today. In the fall, we have a couple of different sessions, as you see the one in October, and then in November where we'll come before the commission and talk about public works projects that are out there. In October, we talk about what we're getting ready to do, and then in November, we come back to the commission, and it's an opportunity for them during the standing committee to offer the input as to which projects that they would like to see prioritized or moved up or such during our session. So that's as we look through that 5-year plan, and then we move forward to build it toward later in the year. In November of last year, our commission met and held a retreat to talk about priorities for this upcoming budget cycle in the long term. It allows everyone to sit down and really work through what are the biggest areas. Commissioners are able to put that out there, and allows us as staff members to start preparing and working on that as we come into the year. In March, we held our first public hearing, and really as it goes to development and as we looked at tonight's public hearing is one that we like having with the community, but it's more statutorily because it happens right before we have the adoption of the budget. Back in March, we're able to really take in community input at that time, and we do see an active number of members of the community come forward, offer input for us to work with as we start building our budget documents in the spring. We actively work with departments in March to get their input. And then in May, we go through and the commission will have a couple of CMIP meetings in special session. You see those on May 9th and the 23rd. Internal budget meetings are then held with departments. As we go into June, I'll sit down and meet with the commission members to walk through with them just how the budget's forming, look at different options that we have to finalize decisions and where we're going with the budget in terms of where we have things set from where our mill rates focused on, what changes we need to make, active decisions would need to be put in place before presenting a budget at the end of June. And then we go through the series of workshops that were held in July of this year, leading up to today, where we're ready to move forward with our final adoption of the process. With that, I'm going to ask our budget manager to come forward, Reginald Lindsay, and give kind of a brief run through of the numbers and such, and a couple of the projects that are in this year's budget. Mr. Lindsay?
This year's 2020 proposed budget, a $394 million budget that funds 29 state certified funds and provides over 200 services. The current slide breaks down the different funds that we have within this $394 million budget. The largest fund is the general fund, which is 42% of this pie. It's $163 million. And then the next largest fund is the county general fund, which is $67 million. And then we also have the sewer system fund, which is a $60 million budget. So I talked about the city general fund being a $163 million budget. This delves down into the different functions of that $163 million budget that is the city general fund. What we have here with the city general fund provides services to Kansas City, Kansas. And largest function here is public safety, which is a $95 million budget, and that makes up fire, police, and the police department. Then we also have community services, which is 13% of the pie, and that consists of transit and NRC. Also, we have here public works, which is 12% of the budget, and that's a $19 million budget. Current slide breaks down the county general fund and the different functions that are within it. County general fund, this is where we account for Bonner Springs and Edwardsville and unincorporated areas of Loring. Largest piece of the pie here is public safety. And Sheriff's Department is here, the largest department that's there, and it's like a $24 million budget. And then we also have general government here, which is a 19% budget, and this includes internal functions like finance and legal department, and the unified clerk, and also the county administrator's office. Also here we have judicial services and the district attorney, which is 12% of the budget. Current slide breaks down the three general funds, which are the city general fund, the county general fund, and the consolidated parks fund. And it's a total of $237 million. So the current slide, what it's doing is breaking down the different functions and the different departments that are in the different functions. And so some of the functions that we have are public safety, and then community services. And what we're doing here is breaking down the different expenditures and sorting them in descending order to give you a view of what their expenditures look like, and you can kind of see in comparison. This particular slide here is also in our budget in brief that you could also look at later on. I'm going to turn this slide over to Doug Bach.
Thank you, Reggie. This sheet just indicates a few of the major projects that are in this year's budget. As you can see, we have moved forward with the Interstate 70 Turner Diagonal Interchange project. There's $3.75 million in the 2020 budget. We also have $3.75 that we will pay to the state in 2021. This leverages a $28 million project for our community to come forward with federal and state funding as part of it. You also see several other ones that we have. Leavenworth Road, the second phase of that. Our Kansas Levee Betterment, our project is a project that's associated with the $450 million levee project that's coming into our community being done by the federal government. However, there are also some things we have to do on that area, and by taking care of them now, we actually save about $20 million by spending this $10 million today. You see street maintenance, a few of the other streets that are listed on here, and where we have a courthouse project, such like that, as we list some of our biggest ones. One of the things to note in this year's budget is that we are spending about $25 million more than we're bringing in to this year's budget. That's largely because we have, in the area of sewer system, we have saved up money in that regard, so we have about an $18 million higher expend there from cash, and some of that goes into debt, but it's more from a cash perspective that we can spend in those areas. So we're looking at that from a responsible perspective to how much money we can get in the bank, and we don't have to debt out so much of it as we move forward. As Mr. Lindsay said, this is all the information we have in our budget is online, so you can see the complete document there, as well as the budget staff has completed a smaller brief of the budget if someone would like to go through that, and that's all at our website. The next part of the presentation, I'd like to recognize Wilba Miller, our Director of Community Development, to talk about our one-year action plan for community development. Wilba?
Thank you, Doug. Good evening. The Unified Government of Wyandotte County receives an annual entitlement allocation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, for the following programs: the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. In order to receive these funds, we must submit a 5-year consolidated plan, which includes an assessment of housing needs for both affordable and special needs housing, a housing market analysis, housing priorities and strategies to address those priority needs, a 5-year strategic plan, and an annual action plan. The Unified Government developed a 5-year plan for fiscal years 2017 through 2021. The 2019 annual action plan is the 3rd year of the 5-year plan. The annual action plan consolidates 3 grant programs into a single application, which includes a description of the projects and activities expected to be undertaken using grant funds and any expected program income. Example of eligible CDBG activities are shown on the current slide. The plan also includes, the plan also includes actions that we expect to take during the program year to pursue strategies described in the 5-year plan. The Unified Government must hold 2 public hearings. As Doug said, the first public hearing was held on March 7th, 2019. Prior to developing the draft plan, we take that input and develop it and publish it. It was published on June 13th, and citizens were given 30 days to comment. We are fulfilling the second public hearing requirement tonight. The plan budget is summarized by the slides that you're seeing and is shown by grant program and activities. This plan must be submitted to HUD 45 days prior to the fiscal year end, which starts October 1st, which means it can be submitted no later than August 15th. Failure to submit by August 15th will automatically result in a loss of funds. A resolution calling for the adoption of the 2019 annual action plan and attachments will be presented for commission approval during the meeting tonight for the adoption of the Unified Government budget. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilba. Mayor, with that concludes our presentation, and we would recommend you open it up for a public hearing at this time.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. Before we take public comments, I'll ask Ms. Cobbins to read the statement governing the public hearing.
We would like to welcome all present to this public meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, regarding the Unified Government 2020 proposed budgets and the 2019 to 2020 Annual Action Plan for Community Development. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of your views. We would, however, remind you that there are 6 individuals signed up to speak on the 2020 proposed budget and the 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan for Community Development. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Should you go to the 2-minute mark, I will announce that you have 1 minute remaining, and that will allow you time to wrap up your comments. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. On deck means that you will be next to the podium. We would appreciate your efforts to be considerate to all during their comments. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the hearing for the recording purposes and for our TV viewers. Marsha Rupp to the podium. Dan Welch on deck.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. 3 of us ladies that are in our area in Midtown, neighborhood watch leaders, decided to get together and drive around the neighborhood because we have some code violations. I'm going to just tell you, and I'm going to be quick about it because I have to be, about 2 of them. One is, I guess, a rent for an option to buy, but this guy, it wasn't at first, it was just rental. He has been there for 4 years, and he is using a scrapping business, and he has it all over his property, thrown on the north. I have pictures of it. I've given these pictures to Greg Token. We went around, we found it over in 3 different areas. We found a trampoline that was so big, it was as big as the front yard. It was in between a tree and the house. How in the world would firemen ever hose a house or get people out of there, and a brick wall in front of the walkway that you have to go out, and a basketball goal, one of those you make shots in the walkway. I thought, how in the world would, in a fire, would kids get, and you know they got kids in there because they got these toys, and I don't consider that a toy. I thought, when you say toys, I thought a bicycle or a skateboard or something like that. This is a big apparatus for amusement. It should be in the backyard, and the grass is not growing underneath there. The other one is this woman, this is back in 2018, and it's not even been an abatement. The fence line, it's along Kimball, I'll just say that. The backyard fence line is so full of debris that you cannot see the fence. And the debris, the weed trees, I call them, because that's what they are, weed trees.
You have 1 minute.
And they ruin your fence, has grown up around the telephone lines. That's how high they are. It's terrible, looks like a jungle. Okay, I turned this in back in 16. The person in charge at that time cleared it. It looks that way now again. I turned it in 18. It has not been taken care of or turned into abatement. And then I'm going to give this list to Melissa. I have talked to Melissa. I gave the pictures to Greg Token, okay, and talked to him. And I'm just the spokesperson. There's 2 other ladies that are in our area that we went through. And I will go back there to see if these are done, believe me. And you know, knowing me, that I will do that. But anyway, you know, we have to keep these neighborhoods clean because of crime. I want to tell you another thing. Please keep your eyes open in your neighborhood.
Your time is up, thanks.
Oh, I have to tell them this. Please, give me, I have to, this one thing. It's not even about a code violation. It's about.
Entertain a motion to extend for 1 minute.
Motion for 1 minute.
All in
Yes.
favor? Aye.
Real quick. We were going up 47th Street. I'm not going to tell you the address because it didn't have an address on the house at the time. Now it does. It's the place on 47th where the 2 arrows are going either way when you get to the top of 47th onto Georgia. My husband said, did I just see what I just saw? We turned the truck around. We pulled in on Cleveland, backed up. We went up the hill and stopped in front of the house. He had seen the woman taking groceries out of her SUV, okay? When we pulled in front of the house, she was unlocking a cage she had her 2 little girls in on the front step of the front door of the house. I am not, and you know, my police officer, community police officer, when I called this in right away to the police. When I did, he said, I knew that was a good call when I got it.
1 minute, time is up.
You know, because I worked in the police department, I read those books about
Thank you.
laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rupp.
Dan Welch to the podium. Faith Rivera will be on deck.
The name is Dan Welch, 6221 Armstrong. Those that know me best know I come to talk about parks. I learned something interesting here a few weeks ago from a radio broadcast. They were talking about Bhutan does not measure gross national product. They measure gross national happiness. And one of the features of gross national happiness that is most important to their community is their parks. Huron Place has been an important park for Kansas City, Kansas for well over 100 years. We've had Civil War parades there, Christmas events, presidential campaign speeches. We had a rose garden, minnow pond. We actually had a revival building there at one time. It was rather large. School buildings, 2 public libraries over the years. We've had huge flower displays, tennis courts, street fairs, fundraisers, and in 1916, an anti-smoking campaign. Huron Cemetery, which adjoins Huron Place, the city made a deal in 1916 to mow it and take care of the trees. Park Commissioner Brown failed to do his duty and lost re-election. In 1970s, Lupita Rocha helped plan Huron Cemetery as it is now. It was the cemetery extension into Minnesota Avenue. That piece of green in Minnesota Avenue is federal land. Much of the work for that project was financed by the federal government. Now we have the steps into Huron Cemetery that have basically collapsed, that were built during those mid-70s.
You have 1 minute, sir.
We need some help.
Thank you, sir.
Faith Rivera to the podium. Tashira Mank will be on deck.
Hello. Sorry, it's a little loud. I'm Faith Rivera. I live at 908 Hagman Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66103. I'm a precinct leader. I'm also, too, a community activist. So I'm just coming to you. I know this is an open forum, and you guys always say, come talk to us. We don't hear from you, blah, blah, blah. So I'm coming for the community. And I know it won't be taken care of today, but I want to we've been putting bugs in your ears about what's going on and how we feel out here in the community. So let me go ahead and just approach you guys properly. So first thing we want to talk about is, let's talk about getting pools in our neighborhoods. We need to start discussing that in our budgets. Pools would be nice, better parks, funds for more projects for our children out here in Wyandotte County. Another thing is the community wants to talk about and wants some action on is the pilot tax. And we understand what it is. We understand. We've heard it time and time again. It's election time. We just talked about it last night. But this is something that we're not going to give up on. And this is something that we're going to continue to talk about. Also, to our community centers, keeping our community centers within our community for our kids and our neighbors, our neighborhood. That's another situation. So I hope that you guys listen to us. We're talking to journalists. They're reaching out to us. They're doing news stories about us, and they want to hear what's going on and what's upsetting us. And so I hope you guys take this to heart, because we're running for office. I'm running for BPU. We've got people running for Register of Deeds. We are tired of not being listened to, and we're taking this opportunity to say,
1 minute
listen
now.
to us. And we hope that you get this because we're running against you. All right? Thank you.
Tashira Mank to the podium. Minaya Taylor will be on deck.
Hello, I'm Tashira Mank, and I stay here in Wyandotte County. I wanted to talk about children's programs. You just said that the general fund was roughly $163 million. You guys are spending $28 million on something that I call a baby jail, but you've named the Juvenile Justice Center. I want to know, why can't we have a budget for like $28 million for Parks and Rec so that we can ensure the future of our kids instead of ensuring that their future will fill up your new jailhouse over there for them? Why is it that the jail costs more than Parks and Rec? Why is it that the schools and Parks and Rec don't collaborate when we service the same kids every day? After they leave school, they go to Parks and Rec. If Parks and Recreation and the recreation centers were put into place for our kids to be able to go after school for a safe place when the parents were at work. So I'm trying to figure out why there's a jail that costs more than our budget for Parks and Rec. I would like to know why there's not more kids programs. I had them when I was a kid. It seemed like we've lost sight of that. It's like we've given up on our kids. We've invested in their failure instead of their success. So that's all I would like to say.
Minaya Taylor to the podium. Janice Witt will be on deck, and that's our last one.
Hi, my name is Minaya Taylor. I'm a resident of Wyandotte County, and I just wanted to say that I wish that there were more programs for kids my age, because I I don't think anyone's noticed, but there's been a lot of teen suicide in this area as of late, and there's been a lot of more bullying. Like, I go to Sumner Academy, and it's supposed to be a bully-free zone and a fight-free zone, but it's really not. I've noticed that last year there were a lot of 8th graders who were being bullied and cutting themselves and getting shoved in lockers, and I wish that there was something that society could do to help them. Thank you.
Janice Witt to the podium.
My name is Janice Witt. You can locate me on Facebook at the Black and White Newspaper, KC.com.
And your city of residency, please, for the record.
For the record, 2717 North 88th Terrace, KCK 66109. I have a question. When do broken promises become lies? Our city is an open monopoly. It is run by the hierarchy. The property is owned and distributed by the hierarchy, not by the people who actually pay the taxes and purchase it. When do failed management choices become a crime? I'll start off with our 3/8 cent tax, slush fund. We are giving that money supposedly to go to our safety and security, yet our police department is 40 officers down. Where is that money? We then went and we've given, these are all over the board, the Kansas City Sporting Stadium. How much money do we have invested in that property? Who pays the BPU? Who pays the taxes? Google, more broken promises. Google was supposed to turn this city around, provide numerous hundreds of jobs. Has not happened. No, it's certainly not to the extreme that we were promised. We went for 2 years without an at-large commissioner. That goes against our guidance inside of our charter. Backfire barbecue, backfired all over the place. There was no answer to the public in regards to Backfire barbecue's failure, because we never answer to failures. T-Rex, another failed monopoly piece bought by the unified government. T-Bones, our Star Bond windfall. Anybody recognize any of these? If you don't, please look them up. The Star Bond windfall that was supposed to come in and make everything better and get our taxes taken down when our mayor was running for office. This was a promise that was guaranteed. Once again, our taxes are still higher.
You have 1 minute.
We have a failing infrastructure. We have the Woodlands that was brought out, which has once again failed and been denied. As a matter of fact, one of our leaders came up with an answer to why they would not have the Woodlands, because she wanted to protect the partnership. If that is not a syndicate, I have never seen one. Again, John Garland, the toxic park. Our children are put there to play. 18 soccer fields that were promised to us that turned into some kind of futsal field that no one knows. I've driven those parks and have seen no one there. We have other BPU mystery taxes and the pilot, which no one can really explain, but costs a lot of people more than even than our electric bill. Wyandotte County Economic Development Council. These are folks mostly who aren't even from Wyandotte County, who are established to decide what happens within our borders. There is still no grocery store in the Northeast. We have $6 million.
Your time is up,
I would like to
ma'am.
request an extension, please, just as our previous person did.
Move for 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you. We still have no grocery store in the Northeast. Hard Rock Hotel was promised to us in a certain way. Hard Rock Hotel is still non-existent. The downtown shareholders, once again, another part of our community that is run by outsiders who decide what is going to happen. Wyandotte County has become what appears to be a Ponzi scheme. The people who live here pay the taxes and have no say. The Wyandotte County Fairgrounds, once again, a failure. When does failed management choices become a crime? I say today. The Jack Reardon Center has failed us numerous times, yet it goes unnoticed, it goes unmentioned. We have a $6 million store going in that our tax dollars are paying for. And this store should be called KU Med Center Grocery. It is not for this community. The grocery store that we were promised is still thrown up in the air. Cerner was given property. When they came here, we called them the wizards, and they were supposed to bring all this money and stay in the T-bones and help pay those bills.
Your time is
Instead,
up, ma'am.
we now have multiple Cerner fields. I thank you for listening, and I beg you, Do what's right by the people of this community. Find your conscience. I understand. But please, reach for your conscience.
Mayor, we've had one additional sign up.
Thank you.
Doug Spangler to the podium.
Thank you, Doug Spangler, Kansas City, Kansas. Mayor and Commission, I thank you for your time and your service to our community. The budget proposed that the handout describes $394 million is tough to talk about just in 3 minutes. And I think that all of the speakers before could have utilized more time, but I do appreciate the process and know what you've been through because I've watched you on UGTV and made a record of that, and I appreciate the deliberations. I emailed each one of you this morning to talk about the budget hearing specifically that was held last week, and I think during my observation, tenure as a citizen and a public servant, that was the best discussion of finance that your CFO provided to the commission on the level of debt that you're incurring as you consider projects, which I wrote to you about this morning. So when we invest $7.4 million to buy Indian Springs, and then we spend $16 million in addition, that's a total of $23 million for that real estate. You are a real estate enterprise right now, the unified government. So you have a $23 million enterprise that's contained as an asset in this budget, and then you sell it for $400 with a 20-year tax abatement, okay? Your budget will never provide solutions doing that. You have to be more transparent in terms of putting out, in that instance, a fully disclosed RFP with competitive timelines. Why do you want to do that? So you can profit money for your real estate enterprise and build the assets that these people are talking about. Out of the nearly 160,000 citizens that exist and live in Wyandotte County,
You have
they
1
pay,
minute, sir.
thank you, they pay taxes, they pay use taxes, they pay your pilot fee, they pay your sales taxes, et cetera. Only 7 or 8 can get down here, okay? That should alarm you more than what you realize. I've been surprised as I've been on travel, et cetera, that we haven't had more discussion during your other processes. Yet people are frustrated because they talk about that and they provide real solutions and nothing happens. And so next year you may be down to 5 if you keep the same course. I urge you in overall to consider a mill levy reduction just to keep the spirit of the taxpayers up. You're making progress. Last year, you proposed a mill reduction and staff said it would be literally the end of the world and you would have a financial collapse. I remember, I attended the last meeting and many of you do too. You went ahead and voted, and what happened financially?
Your time is up, sir.
Reduced more money to your budget this year than you did last year. I urge you to consider the information contained in my email, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, I close the public hearing. I'd like to thank each of you for coming out tonight to make comments during our public hearing process. Do we have a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters related to litigation?
I move that the commission go into executive session until 7 p.m. to consult with our attorneys and to discuss, under the attorney-client privilege, confidential matters related to pending litigation, as permitted under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in the discussion, and that we reconvene in open session at 7 p.m. here in the commission chambers located on the first floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
All right, we will recess to the 9th floor.